There was a moment in ancient Japan when a master swordsman stopped mid-duel, looked at his opponent, and simply walked away. Not out of fear, not out of weakness. He walked away because he realized the fight had nothing to do with him. That story has stayed with philosophers for centuries, and once you understand what he actually knew, you might start seeing the world a little differently too. Most people spend their entire lives reacting. Someone says something sharp, and something inside you tightens. A stranger gives you a look, and your mind runs through every possible meaning. We call this being sensitive, or emotional, or just human. But there is something older and quieter underneath it all that most people never discover. The ancient Stoics called it the gap, that small, invisible space between what happens to you and how you respond. They believed that inside that gap lived the most powerful version of a person, not someone who feels nothing, but someone who chooses everything. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men who ever lived, wrote privately in his journal that other people's opinions of him were simply none of his business. This wasn't arrogance, it was clarity. He ruled an empire and still reminded himself daily that the noise outside him had no authority over the quiet inside him. What modern psychology now calls emotional regulation, the Stoics were practicing 2,000 years ago. And the fascinating part is that neuroscience has recently confirmed what they only felt intuitively. When you consciously pause before reacting, you activate a different part of the brain, the part responsible for reason, perspective, and choice, the part that doesn't panic. But here is where it gets even more interesting. Researchers studying people who seem genuinely unbothered, not cold or disconnected, but peaceful in a deep, stable way, found something unexpected. These people didn't stop caring. They actually cared more. They just stopped confusing other people's behavior with their own identity. Think about that for a second. When someone is rude to you, your brain often treats it like information about you, like proof of something. But what if it was never about you at all? What if most of the time people are simply acting out of their own unresolved inner world, and you happen to be nearby? There's a concept in psychology called projection, and it works quietly in almost every difficult interaction you've ever had. The person who criticizes you most harshly is often carrying the heaviest weight. The one who tries to shrink you is usually afraid of their own size. Understanding this doesn't make the behavior acceptable, it just makes it less powerful over you. There's an old West African proverb that says, "The axe forgets, but the tree remembers." People often wound others without realizing it, and then move on. But the person who was hurt can carry that moment for years. The practice of becoming unbotherable isn't about pretending the wound didn't happen. It's about deciding that someone else's carelessness doesn't get to write your story. And this is where something quietly profound happens. When you stop shrinking or expanding based on how others treat you, something in your energy shifts. People around you sense it, not because you've become distant, but because you've become grounded. There's a stillness in someone who no longer needs external validation to feel whole. And that stillness, as it turns out, is one of the most magnetic things a human being can carry. The swordsman who walked away from the duel wasn't running from conflict. He had simply realized that not every battle deserves your presence, and that the strongest response is sometimes the one no one sees coming. Peace isn't something that happens when life gets easier. It's something you choose before life gets the chance to decide for you.